Welcome to the Utah Home Builders Association podcast. My name is Jesse. I'm here with Ross Ford. He is our master builder. Ross, I have some questions today about the Chevron Deference.
Good. Fun thing to talk about. Something the court's been working on.
All right. Well, I think our first question is, what is a Chevron Deference?
So the Chevron Deference refers to a Supreme Court ruling from and I believe it's in the 70s, and it was with Chevron Oil is why it ends up being the Chevron Deference. But it was a court ruling that said when we have a rule or we have a law that's ambiguous, and so we're not sure exactly what it does, rather than have the court make the ruling, they rely on the federal agency. So long as a federal agency's ruling is considered reasonable, then that becomes the standard the court uses. That becomes the standard we go if there's that conflict.
All right. Well, that's fun that it does tie in with the oil, because when I hear of Chevron, I think of either the gas station or a Chevron pattern.
Right.
There's a pattern.
No, and the oil, because again, it was is like an EPA thing. It was a case trying to figure out some of the things that obviously with a gas company, their exploration and everything going, well, we're not sure what's right and what's wrong with the EPA. So right, that's where it came from.
A lot of times I want to know what's right or wrong with the EPA. All right. So how does the Chevron Deference apply to home building?
Because it's called the Chevron Deference, and again, because we talked about it, so it's with an oil company, but it has nothing to do with oil other than that's what brought it into existence. So it has to do with any regulatory agency. So a lot of our laws are passed, and they're very, very broad. They're so broad that they almost don't make any sense, and then they're passed with the understanding that they will go to one of the agencies, and they will put in all the detail. That over the years, Congress has just got less and less of an appetite to do the details, and more of, here, we will give it to some sort of a federal agency, and they put it in there. So when they put together a ruling from the Supreme Court, this is, okay, we're going to give that ruling in favor of an agency. It's any agencies and all agencies. It sets a standard that all of those regulatory agencies now have that ability to decide what that ambiguous law means and how it will apply. So obviously, home builders, everything we do in construction has a lot of regulation, a lot of federal regulation. And so this applies to all of those regulatory bodies.
All right. How did this end up in front of the Supreme Court?
Yeah, an interesting case. And it's been a few years ago that this all got started, but the fishermen, herring fishermen, are required, because they have all kinds of rules on what they can catch and how big they have to be and when you have to put them back to protect the fisheries, which makes sense. But in order to do that, they go out on their fishing boats, and they have to have an inspector that actually goes on the boat with them. And so the government said, well, because you're taking them out on the boat with you, you have to provide them a place to live, you have to provide them food, and you have to pay what it costs for us to send them out there. And that's been in place for quite some time. And the fishermen just finally said, we're going to make the argument that again, when we talk about this ruling, we say, so long as it's reasonable. And they said, this is not reasonable. It's not reasonable that we have to cover the cost of the regulator and have space taken off our boat to have them there. So they pushed the issue, saying, we believe that regulatory agencies have gone well beyond what is reasonable.
That makes sense. So what happens now that it's gone?
So the Supreme Court, they looked at it and they ruled that these agencies have gone too far. And so they've taken that away, and now it will be interesting to see what happens when it's gone. Our government, our way of life does not do well in a vacuum. So this is a huge amount of power that has rested with these agencies, which now they no longer have it. So So the good thing is, for a lot of people, the regulated people are looking at it and they're big celebration. Woohoo, this is great. We no longer have the EPA or OSHA or HUD or whoever the regulatory agency is. We no longer have them in our business as much, that they have to prove their case. But the negative is, now you prove your case to a judge. So the scary thing could be that now, instead of having the regulatory agency deciding what is right and what is wrong, we have a judge deciding. Now, the good thing is everybody gets to make their argument and do their best job. The bad thing is I feel like we have judges that are trying to act more like legislators. They are pushing their opinion and their thoughts. And so we may not get all of the great rulings we think we're going to as this moves forward. Before, it's like, well, it was at least dependable. At least we had some certainty that we said, okay, well, in this particular regulation, we don't like it. We don't like how it's working, but we do understand it. We know what it'll do, and we know how to comply. But if all of a sudden this is now with a judge and it can go to a different judge, my guess is we're going to see a lot of these cases go clear back up to the Supreme Court again, and it may be a little chaotic for a few years.
Sounds like it will keep the Supreme Court busy and all the lower courts.
They need something to do. So.
All right. Well, here at the HBA, we believe that everybody deserves to be in a house. Let's build a solution together.